Whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It is May 19th, 2020. We will call the Wright County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone, here at the boardroom, and for those joining us, including Commissioner Burrell remotely. So the first item is the minutes from County Board meeting on the 5th of May.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, motion made by
Second.
Commissioner Leiden, seconded by Commissioner Potter. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
You want a roll call vote, Madam?
Oh, yes, right.
I thought, I'm going to make a note to myself, roll call.
Aye.
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 All right. Motion passes 5-0. And the item B, County Board minutes from the 15th of May. Any questions on that or corrections?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 15th.
I'll second
All
it.
right. Motion made by Commissioner Vetch, seconded by Commissioner Delyden. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right. Motion passes. The review and approval of the agenda. Anything that,
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve today's agenda as presented.
Second.
all right. Motion made by Commissioner Vetch, seconded by Commissioner Potter. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right. And the consent agenda, anything that anyone would like to remove for further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Leiden, seconded by Commissioner Burrell. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right. Motion passes. We move on to the timed items, and we have Mr. Bob Pivola, Auditor Treasurer.
Hey, good morning, Board, Madam Chair. The first item on the agenda is approving a plat, Indian Lake Hills in Corinna Township. In your packet, you should have gotten the Kreiser's opinion. We have the proper fees and signatures in line, so I'm asking you to approve this plat.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the plat for Indian Lake Hills in Corinna Township.
All right.
Second.
Motion. I think that Commissioner Potter, you were the second? Or was it Commissioner Delight? You were both about the same
Commissioner
time.
Potter.
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Vetch, seconded by Commissioner Potter.
Madam
Any
Chair.
discussion? Commissioner Delight?
Yeah, regarding the approval, there was nothing listed in our packet regarding that. All that was on the documents was the April budget and CIP report, or at least that's what's on the county website.
Yeah, there was no attachment to it at all.
Yep.
Yep.
Right.
I seen it back
Chair,
there, though.
Commissioners, I do have it here if you want to see it. Planning and zoning and Greg have signed off on it. Or not planning and zoning, Corinna does their own, but do you want to see this, or do you want to?
It was,
Do you want to just, why don't you just pass it down so we.
I think it was back there, too. So,
Yeah. So we've all seen it.
yep. It just didn't get attached to the agenda, but,
Yeah, I did see that.
yeah, I seen that, too.
Charlie, are you okay voting on this without seeing the actual document?
I am, yeah.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. It's
Madam
been,
Chair, We'll scan this and send it through SIP Plus, so
Okay.
it should be distributed out to you.
yeah, thank you, appreciate that. Any more discussion on this? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes.
Madam Chair, the second item on the agenda is the approval of the April budget report. We're a third of our way through the year. Obviously, our revenues are contingent on taxes. They don't come in until May anyways. There's really nothing for me to draw your attention to in the budget report, but if you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the April budget and CIP report.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Delighten. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Potter. Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right. Motion passes 5-0. All right. Moving on. Virgil Hawkins, you're online.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board of Commissioners.
Morning.
Today there's two highway items for your consideration. The first item is to approve a jurisdictional change agreement with Buffalo Township for County Road 147 and Braddock Avenue Northeast. For some background, Buffalo Township approved this agreement at their Monday, May 11th meeting. And then once county board approval is given, there's still some future next steps that need to be taken. There needs to be a public notice and then a hearing held in Buffalo Township. And then there would need to be a revocation resolution. And those things can be done in the future once life is more back to normal, because I think Buffalo Township is having closed meetings right now. So these next steps would have to be taken likely later this year.
All right. All right, that sounds good. We've got these signed documents, and that's great to see.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the jurisdictional change between Buffalo Township for County Road 147 and Braddock Avenue Northeast.
All right.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Vetch, seconded by Commissioner Delighten. Any discussion on this?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Virgil, and your staff for getting this taken care of. It's something that, as the buildings move out there, Braddock Avenue is going to see a marketed increase in traffic.
Yes.
And this is good to get this done and just calming all the fears that Buffalo Township had with this jurisdictional change and everything. And again, thank you for, it was a slow walk through this, but we got it done, and thank you.
Yep. Yep, we appreciate that.
Welcome.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Motion passes. All right, the next one, Virgil?
Yeah, the next one is to approve a traffic control signal and maintenance agreement with the City of Albertville. And this is based on a new development in the City of Albertville that will connect to Highway 19 at 53rd Street. And basically, it's development-driven improvements to mitigation for the impacts to our highways. And the city will be paying for a new traffic signal at that intersection. And then I think they would have a developer's agreement that would convey that cost to the developer. But this is the agreement between the city and the county.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner
A
Potter?
motion to approve the traffic control maintenance agreement.
All right.
I'll second it.
By Commissioner Potter, seconded by Commissioner Delighten. Is there any discussion on this item?
Yes, Madam
Commissioner
Chair.
Potter?
Thank you. For the public, this is at the intersection of 53rd and County Road 19 in Albertville. It's that area that has the new apartment, townhouse, and daycare buildings that are going in on that corner that precipitated the changes of this. It didn't get a traffic signal before because it really didn't warrant it until that front piece was done. Now that they've got that in place, that's why it's going in there. And I'm sure that the residents on 53rd coming from the west to east are going to be happy as all get up, because making a left-hand turn to go north on 19 from there is kind of a bugger at certain times.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Delighten?
Virgil, right now, this is only going to be 3 ways, because the east side is not developed yet. everything I'm assuming will be put into place so that when the east side does get developed, that it'll be a simple measure just to set up that other leg?
Yes, that's a good point, Commissioner Delotten, because that fourth leg is also a city leg, and when that develops, so the infrastructure that's put in now with the signal would need to be such that it would accommodate that fourth leg in the future.
Okay, so the cost will be very minimal at that point then. If
Yes.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Thank you, Virgil.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Greg Picard, our Veteran Services Director.
Morning, Board. Morning, Madam Chair. So the item I have before you today is we received another donation from the DAV down in Hutchinson. This is the second one in my time here, so it's a very generous donation from the auxiliary unit there for us to help veterans. And that's basically, there's no stipulations to it. It's as I see fit to use it to help kind of fill the gaps where the VA and the state and stuff don't have a program that helps a veteran emergency-wise, things like that. That's kind of what we use it for, gas cards, you know, kind of one-off things that there's no other program that really helps.
It's great to get something from outside the county as well as for our
Absolutely, and
donations.
this is the second one they've done. I think it was 18, I think we got one from
Okay,
them as well, so. Yeah, it's very, very much appreciated.
I'll make a
Much so.
motion for accept the resolution for the DAV donation from the Hutchinson Group.
all right, motion made by Commissioner Delotten, second by Charlie. Charlie, do you want to second that?
Sure, I'll second that.
All right. All right, motion made and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right,
Thank you very much.
resolution passes. And thank you
Thank you,
to
sir.
DAV Auxiliary 37.
Oh, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Greg, I'm assuming you send a thank you card out to them? Or do you want the board to send one?
Sir, I did send one. I drafted a letter on letterhead thanking them for their donation, generous donation or whatever, and I already sent it out to them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you. All right, moving on to items for consideration. Our committee minutes from May 4th, 2020, and Commissioner Vetch, would you like to take those
Sure.
minutes?
Sure. So on the date of May 4th, we met as a committee of the whole to discuss the Central Minnesota Council on Aging and to discuss some of the federal emergency FEMA funds and where we would possibly get funding for the senior meal program that was kind of initiated nationwide for individuals 60s plus. A lot of it was an educational meeting to discuss how the funds come from the federal government into the State Board on Aging and how that's allocated out to Central Minnesota Council on Aging, and then how the Central Minnesota Council on Aging then allocates those funds to different organizations within the, was it 14 counties?
I believe
I think it was 14.
14 counties that are in that organization. A lot of the conversation was stemming around concerns that Wright County Community Action had in regards to shortages of funds to facilitate these high volume of requests for meals. A lot of it was the discussion was about debunking myths that one organization may or may not be withholding money from another. So a lot of it was getting everybody on the same page. The discussion was talking about who would go forward with applying for FEMA grants if we would choose to use that route. Would that be the state that would be applying for those FEMA grants, or would it be the Central Minnesota Council on Aging, or would it be the individual counties? That was going to be looked at outside of this meeting to come forward with more information. We're still holding out to find out an answer on that. Then also, Jay Weatherford presented some information on their meals and what they've done thus far, kind of bringing everybody up to date on the number of recipients and the number of meals that they're putting out there through May, up till May 4th at that point, which is totally a little more than 14,000 meals. So then also kind of recapping, there was discussion on an, I'm sorry, I'm reading my notes here. So then there was discussion on how long we would continue this program on, and whether it would be a hard end to it, or how it would eventually trickle off to the more current program of Meals on Wheels that existed prior to the pandemic. So the recommendations coming out of the meeting were to determine who will be sponsoring agency for the FEMA grant application for food support for county senior citizens. And then the other recommendation is, if the county is identified as a sponsoring agency, establish an end date and a dollar limit for the program and communicate this to the public. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendations.
All right, motion made by
Second.
Commissioner Vetch,
Madam
seconded by Commissioner Potter. Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Oh, no, as long as it was second, I do want to have some discussion about this.
Okay,
Absolutely.
sure, yeah, we're ready
Madam
for
Chair.
discussion.
Okay, I just want the rest of the board and the public in Wright County to know that we were very much deceived at this meeting by Lori Burleson I feel anyway that we were deceived. We were asking about the funding, and I think when you omit to mention that there was a request by the governor, apparently, I'm not sure where it came from, but for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe to get approximately $637,000 worth of meals delivered there. I think that probably should have been mentioned at this meeting, is what I'm getting at. We had approximately $422,000 of CARES money, grant money from the federal government that came to Central Minnesota Council on Aging, and that was all slated to go to the tribe. We had a meeting this was on the 5th. On the 7th, we had a Central Minnesota Council on Aging, and that was brought up it was proposed to that much money to go to the tribe. Now, the board did lower that down somewhat, but I just thought it was real disingenuous to not mention that, and then we're using $400 and some thousand in reserves, the money that we had left over as well. So we had $800 and some thousand to put toward meals, and it was being proposed to go a large share to the tribe, and I understand their concerns too, but we have them all across our entire service area, 14 counties. So anyway, that's my point. I just thought that should get out in the light, and we are having we had another meeting after that where it was adjusted again on the 12th of May, and I think this coming Friday they're actually having a meeting. Let me see. I'm not positive on this.
The State Board on Aging.
Yeah, and the State Board on Aging at 11 o'clock. They're having a meeting with a bunch of the state and federal politicians to kind of talk about the funding, things like that. But anyway, I just felt it was very disingenuous what we were given with the questions we were asked, and I don't say any of the questions were asked wrong. Are answered wrong, but I think when you omit to say something, it's just not very nice, that's all.
Okay,
Madam
thank
Chair.
you, Commissioner Burrell. Yes, Commissioner Vetch.
Commissioner Burrell, thank you so much for bringing up those concerns. There is a lot going on here, and I do want to say that I apologize. I wasn't quite prepared to. I wasn't prepared to give these minutes. I didn't know about that presenting when there were a large amount of minutes on them.
I'm sorry, I
and
stuck
I
the thing on the door, but
Yeah, there's a lot in this meeting, so I encourage the public to read through the minutes. It was a quite lengthy meeting. We did put there's estimated about $1 million shortfall
Right.
between now and the end of June. And the big discussion is, can this program sustain at the parameters that it's currently in right now? Or does it need to be modified? Or does it have to end altogether? Because right now, it doesn't seem like anybody has the funds to do this. And I don't even know if there is the guarantee, even if you applied for the FEMA grants, that you would get it. And I can't speak 100%, but I think a lot of it is you have to spend the money, apply, and hope you get it and hope you do it right. So there's a lot of chances with that, going down that road with FEMA. So,
And you also have to pay 25% of it back. So it's a partial grant. It's like 75% grant, and then 25% you pay back.
and I do want to qualify that $1 million shortfall is of the 14 county consortium
Yep.
shortfall. It's not $1 million shortfall for Wright County. It's $1 million between the 14 counties. So I want to make sure that people aren't.
All right. Is there any, Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing I want to congratulate Commissioner Burrell for the time he's been on the board and Council on Aging. He has consistently brought up the shortcomings of the Central Minnesota Council on Aging and how Wright County's being shortchanged and not getting our fair share. And he's been on this from day one. It keeps bringing back, these are the things they should be doing, not doing, and I applaud him for bringing these issues to bear here for us, so we get a better understanding what's actually going on there. Because it's one of those, of all the committees we're on, some get lost in the shuffle. That was one that was lost in the shuffle, but he has been consistent on this with his issues regarding what's going on there, and that's federal money that comes to us. That's hate to use the word entitled, but towards Wright County, and we're not getting our fair share on this. And we should not be subsidizing other counties or other things, entities there. And for that, again, thank you, Charlie.
Yep, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. And just
Go
to
ahead,
clarify
Charlie.
that, right now, I don't think any of our people are getting the fair thing, but the board voted to go ahead with the funding, like you said, at a little reduced rate, but, that was their choice to do, so. But I just wanted to clarify that. I think it should have been brought up at that committee of the whole meeting to be entirely truthful, I guess.
Yep, appreciate that.
And
Commissioner Rich,
nothing wrong with the minutes. I mean, I think the minutes accurately
Yeah.
reflected what went on, so.
Commissioner Vetch, you had,
Madam Chair, Commissioner Burrell, I wanted to point this out as well because you helped me discover this as well, is we are now going on, I think it's 3 or 4 years of continually turning back tens of thousands of dollars back to the Council on Aging on money that was allocated to Wright County because we didn't have utilization of it. And I think it was interesting when we questioned where those funds go, and we were never given a real clear answer on where those funds go, that we turn back. And now we come to 1 year where we may need more than we were allocated. These are the big question mark.
yep,
Commissioner Vetch, I did want to say, it's not really money that we turn back per se, because there's a formula at the state area, the Board on Aging at the state, and that money is just allocated to the entire Central Minnesota Council on Aging, and it's up to our board to distribute it out. But what the problem we had in the past was, because we didn't have providers in Wright County to utilize those funds, they didn't necessarily get turned back, but they were utilized in other areas, in the other 13 counties.
right, yeah, thank you. All right, any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
all right,
And
motion passes.
Madam Chair, just let me approve this.
Commissioner
I wanted to ask Administrator Kelly, did we hear any more on that FEMA thing, on who is applying for that? Or we
No, I don't have an update on that.
Okay.
To look into that.
Madam Chair, I think Jamie had to.
Yep, Jamie?
This is just third person, so I'm not really speaking for either of the entities, but my understanding, I believe, through Richard Ward, was that they think that community action can apply under their own entity. So that's my understanding, and I believe Richard said that he could help them apply if that was needed.
Okay, so The Central Minnesota Council on Aging?
No, the community
county community,
action
okay.
could apply under their own auspices, is my
Okay.
understanding, and I think that's where it was left.
All right, yeah, thank you. We can further check on that. All right. Moving on to the May 5th Committee of the Whole. Administrator Kelly, would you like to summarize that for us, please?
Sure. As mentioned, we met on the 5th. The topic was to do follow-up from our strategic planning sessions that were held in March. We had a bit of a break here with COVID kind of taking a lot of our attention span, but we had met for 4 days in March and came up with 5 value streams out of that process: empowering the use of land, property, and the environment, optimizing civic engagement, promoting health, safe and healthy communities, shepherding economic growth, and developing county infrastructure. So we discussed a little bit about incorporating those value streams into the cover sheet as part of our budget process and project outlines for the upcoming year. The next step we had discussed was to have meetings with the county commissioners and departments to go over operations. So we had discussed a few questions and that were for department heads to discuss with the board as far as facilitating those meetings and a schedule to move forward with. So talk some of the logistics and some revisions of the questions that we had, and kind of provided an overview of what we were looking for as part of those meetings. We also discussed that department heads were requested to do a SWOT, or a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats assessment for each of their departments as part of the meeting that would be upcoming. So the recommendation out of this meeting was to schedule meetings to review the strategic planning with the individual departments, and Pat Spouty will develop the meeting schedule. Has since been developed, and the first meeting took place yesterday.
Yeah, we appreciate the work that he is doing to coordinate all of us, and I think we had a very productive meeting, Commissioner Delyden and I, with Administrator Kelly yesterday, and it was very productive, and look forward to the next meeting and the other meetings with other department heads.
Sure.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Delyden.
I believe Leah or Pat had sent you guys the outlines that Leah provided. Commissioner Houston and I both felt that it was important for you guys to see that, and also kind of as a possible guideline, or what's the term I'm looking for?
Template, maybe?
Template, there we go, for the other department heads and stuff, because I thought it was kind of put together kind of nicely, so.
Nice job.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Batch?
I do want to say that administration did a great job on that SWOT analysis. You definitely put some good thought into it. I did like looking at where you guys you really looked into and thought really big picture, high level on, where some of those strengths are and where some of those weaknesses are.
Tried to be pretty candid.
Yep.
So,
Well, that's what the whole idea behind this is.
are we sharing something like that with the other department heads then, for them to help them kind of get their wheels turning on?
Well, I think what
Part
we
of
had
it.
talked about was, I wanted your guys' opinion to see if you thought that outline was a good way to do it, if you had any comments, and then they were going to share that with the other department heads, but not the SWOT analysis.
Right.
I mean, I hope that I liked that SWOT analysis, because I think admin did it in such a way that, to me, you accomplished, that really was the holistic view of the whole county. I looked at it, your SWOT analysis, because as administration, you're kind of, you're the main silo. So I think it was really nice from that standpoint. I think at some point, it'd be interesting to share some of those pieces with the other departments, but the top part was great as well, as far as the question answer piece, because I think it'll give them a better idea on how to answer.
So I think what I took away from yesterday was the thought that we could share kind of what was done as the template for other departments that may not have a structure that they'd kind of worked with, and that we would be gathering as we went along all of the different analyses and packaging that and distributing at some point. But if you would like me to send that out to everybody sooner, I can certainly do that as well. So,
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Dryden?
Yeah, I'd rather not send out the SWOT analysis right now,
Yeah.
because I don't want that to,
Influence?
yeah, influence the other, or poison other people. I want as honest information from all the departments as possible, so I don't want that information out there quite yet.
Right.
That's my opinion.
I
Chair, I-
agree, Mr. Commissioner.
Madam Chair, I think you're Commissioner Dahlin, you have a good point there, because otherwise I think what we might end up getting if we sent that out is a lot of regurgitated same answers, and I don't want that. So I think you have a good point there.
Any more discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the committee of the whole minutes from May 5th.
I'll second it.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Potter, seconded by Commissioner Delyden. Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. All right, the county board workshop, and Commissioner Potter, I apologize. I somehow missed when I asked their two commissioners to do minutes.
Madam Chair, in the meantime, I will say, I know what happened here. When Lee put the preparedness thing, the Post-it got stuck on the back of when he put the updated preparedness plan, so I didn't see the Post-it notes. So it was in the, so.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I get
should've-
you from the hip, it was just like, it was like 5 pages a minute, I had to get my mind turning really fast, so.
These are pretty straightforward minutes, so Commissioner Potter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Commissioners met on May 12th in the workshop, met at 9 o'clock. Commissioners are present along with the items with was the scheduled meetings as needed for during this COVID-19 issues going on here, because as the governor gives us updates, we need to be on top of it, and it influences what we do and how we run operations around here. But there was really no recommendation out of that part of the meeting. It's just a matter of we got to go on the fly on some of these things. The next item up that we talked about was preliminary budget discussions. Administrator Kelly met with the auditor treasurer staff on the 11th. The numbers, revenue down 17%. Expenses are also lower at 26%, but that's just, that ebb and flows with, like Auditor Treasurer Hevola said earlier, we don't collect the taxes until this month, so it's kind of a little, it catches up. So we need to be cognizant of what's going on here. And County Assessor Rasmussen said the values have increased, the market value increased 5.94%, which is still pretty healthy. In my particular case, it went up by a little bit more than that, but they're still playing catch up on my end on the thing with the actual sales. And the chair said we got to keep any increases as low as possible, as we know with this situation with the revenues down and everything else. We got to be real mindful with the board. We had a large increase a couple years ago based on some past decisions, and we've been mindful of that. And I said I think all the department heads have been notified of that too. This is a time to really analyze closely what we're doing and how we're doing this, because as other entities are suffering and struggling to get their numbers to balance, we got to be mindful of that and be really cautious what's going on. Plus, in personal opinion here, I think we have done some fund balance adjustments that have made it so it should be a little easier in the future for us to keep those numbers down. And it's, like I say, the hard look at the projects, the CIP, that's going to get the big look this year. The turnback dollars, we've been tightening those budgets, so there's not going to be as many as we've had in the past. So it's just a matter of analyzing it a little bit better, and we know we still have growth, but you still got to be mindful of the tax bill that the citizens get at the end. The other discussion was the non-licensed uniform officer at Department of Motor Vehicles. And Sheriff Derringer gave us an update on situations within his department, and he discussed to have a meeting with the Personnel Committee on the 13th to address the circumstances and the changes. And so the Personnel Committee met, and there'll be the next set of minutes going on there, and what the final decision was that. And the other item was the Agricultural and Drainage Division moved to Parks Department. And this is, we've been looking at for quite a while on how to best utilize the services and that. I think it's a good move. It was well thought out, and basically all the Ts were crossed and Is were dotted the way I'm reading it here. It's a good move. I think, and in case the public out there doesn't know, Matt Detchen, who's our ditch coordinator, has done a fantastic job here, reaching out to the people and addressing their issues here as they come up. Not only the county ditch, but the public waterways and private everything else. I'm real happy, and I know everybody I've talked to have been happy with. We're actually taking this serious. That the ditches and the thing are our responsibility to deal with. So it went through HR and everything else, and how do we do this? And we're hats off to Mark Batice, the park administrator, for taking this on and being part of that division, because it's a little bit more responsibilities on his end, but it's also a good fit in there. I think it'll work. It worked well within that thing. Recommendations that came out of the adopted resolution on the 19th today. The county board to establish ag and drainage division within the Parks Department, make the appropriate transfers at designated effective date. The second one was to increase annual compensation to the Park and Recreation Director by 4.48% or $5,000 annually for the additional responsibility that was put upon him at this time, which I think was fair. Number three was increase annual compensation pay grade to change the agricultural and drainage coordinator to match what was going on. And fourth was approve a budget amendment to the change of agricultural and drainage coordinator compensation and salary range for ditch inspector positions. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, excuse me, but there's one more to go here. That's one thing with a smaller screen. We had COVID-19 update, and it's and Administrator Kelly we talked about how we're going to deal with the aftermath of this, the reopening of the county facilities. The public part has been shut down for the better part of a couple months here, and a reopen is probably going to go in phases, because you can't just flip the switch and open this thing up, because it just doesn't work that way. And each department was working on how they need to address this. Hopefully they think is not all one size, like I mentioned in here, one size doesn't fit all for this opening. Some can open with minor interruptions, and others, like just pick on DMV, that's going to be, wow, it's going to be a different animal there. And they talked about the drop boxes in the mail and everything else we got going on here that help going on. And I know the sheriff has been inundated with the emails and phone calls about the governor's executive orders, and I have to agree with them that it was confusing at time. What's legal, what's not legal, what can do, and I don't believe that the sheriff should be babysitting everything out there. So the deputy's got enough to do without having to be the moral police for people about walking. Discussion regarding the employees and public to wear face masks, and there's a recommendations going forward on face coverings, and it's in draft mode right now, but it's going to keep forward for how the protocol is going to work in the future here. And other than that, all the departments are going to come forward with what they have for their reopening plan, and the recommendations on this was no decision until the Governor Walz issues next order, which the first one expired, but the horse just changed colors, the same horse, different color. The stay-at-home order was replaced with some executive orders, a little different thing, and people can ascertain what they want out of what that means to him. I know all his executive orders and his emergency powers end on June 12th, and that'll coincide with a special session there. Administrators sent out surveys to employees and department heads regarding the use of masks, and again, draft forms are here, getting ready to deal with this issue and how to reopen. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the workshop and the recommendations.
All right.
I'll
Motion
second
made
that.
to approve the minutes and the recommendations from Commissioner Potter, and I think Commissioner DeLyden got in a second ahead of you, so Commissioner DeLyden seconded. Is there any more discussion on this? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeLyden.
I was just curious, did you get responses back from most of the department heads regarding their face masks? issues and concerns and.
We'd done more of a general survey of all kind of the totality of the different issues out there, and most departments did respond.
Okay.
So I think we have a pretty good handle.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep. If there's no more discussion, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. All right, the next item is our Personnel Committee minutes. Commissioner Delyden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Personnel, Employee Relations Committee met on May 13th. All those presents were myself, Christine Hugh, and Sean Johnson remotely. Other presents were the Sheriff, Sean Derringer, Shauna Athman, Matt Treichler, Lori Pollock, and Lee Kelly remotely. There was 3 issues. 2 of them we came up with recommendations. The third one we did not, which we'll be discussing a little bit more here. Buffalo School District has asked for another SRO, School Resource Officer, which created some discussion regarding the budget and how we need to start educating the school districts on what the actual cost is, like we have been doing for the cities, what it actually does cost to have a school resource officer there. And at this point, the sheriff agreed, and he will be looking at in the future regarding renegotiating the existing agreements, and again, just trying to educate them on what the actual costs are, realistic costs, so that they're aware of it. So our recommendation regarding that was to approve the addition of a school resource officer for the 2021 school year at Buffalo High School. And again, to begin the process of educating school board members on the actual personnel costs associated with providing SRO services, and begin to renegotiate existing agreements to better reflect the county's costs for providing SRO services. The second one was an assignment of a deputy at the DMV. An opportunity has come up where there's a deputy that would fit for this position, and since the need is there regarding kind of a traffic control and in the courthouse to try and maintain some orderly process regarding 50% capacity, which this county building is required to maintain in the hallways and that sort of stuff based on Minnesota
Guidance provided,
or actually a requirement, if I remember correctly. So we recommended to approve the assignment of a deputy to the DMV for the remainder of the 2020 fiscal year. With some of the hires that have been held off, it'll kind of be a budget neutral at this point. Going forward, it will fall in the deputy or in the sheriff's budget, but it'll probably have to be kind of brought or shared with some of the other departments, and how we're going to do that, whether or not it's worth messing with all the transfers and all that sort of stuff, will be up to us here in the future. So it's a discussion to have when we start dealing with the budgets. The third item was the sheriff was asking for the moon. No, I'm just kidding. He was only asking for stars.
Don't blame them.
And we recommended that this one go to the committee of the whole. It has a huge impact on what's going to be happening next year for their budget and what they want. So it was involving adding a third sergeant position in CID. So it was thought that the best thing to do would be sending that to committee of the whole for further discussions regarding what his requests will also be for the future next year for budgets. So with that, I will make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendations.
Motion made by Commissioner Delyden. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Potter. Discussion.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Potter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hats off to the Sheriff Derringer for taking a situation that fell in his lap and making the best of it, try to make it, I think having that deputy here, once courts move out, is a good thing, not only for the employees here, but the public. I think it'd be good, and there'll be some challenges with it, but I think it's a good thing going forward. And I appreciate the making the best of the situation thrust upon you on that.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Burrell.
I just had a curiosity question. The Buffalo High School, is that in Buffalo Township or the city of Buffalo?
It's in the city of Buffalo.
Okay, and then, but they're requesting the sheriff to do the school resource officer? I thought if it was in the city limits, it would be the city's responsibility.
It is the city's responsibility to respond to any incident that comes up, but the school resource officer, they had an agreement with the city of Buffalo prior, but could not reach an agreement this coming year. Financially, correct.
Madam Chair?
So that's why they asked the county then to do it?
Correct.
Which is one of the reasons why the discussion regarding true cost needs to be put forward to school board members so they understand.
And the thing is that when we had the discussion with the sheriff, he says that we can easily have 15 or so, or well, we've got 12 to 15. It's easy to find work for them during the summer months. And when the school resource officers aren't in school, there's plenty of work. They're filling in for vacations and that kind of thing. However, it gets to be an issue if we start having 20 or so school resource officers of the year, if we're not able, the school isn't able to pay for the true cost of what this deputy is, so.
Madam Chair, and I'm quite surprised because, so this one deputy does both the middle school and the high school, correct, Sheriff? Because I know like Monticello has a SRO at the high school and the middle school, two separate SROs. I just was interested because Buffalo's quite larger.
Correct. We started in the middle school with Buffalo last year. That was an approval that the board authorized us, so we've had an SRO in the Buffalo School District this year. Starting in the middle school, the city of Buffalo and the school district reached an agreement for this school year for to keep an SRO of the city of Buffalo in the high school. Now, circumstances have changed, and the school district has reached out to us to provide that service to the high school as well.
Oh, there will be two.
So there will be two SROs in the Buffalo School District.
Now, because I remember the conversation last year, because the way I was reading the minutes, I was kind of going, huh? And it's because I was reading provided an SRO to the middle school and the high school. I'm thinking, is that the same person? I'm thinking,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks for clarification.
All right, any other discussion?
Commissioner
Delyden?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. One of the other reasons why we wanted to have the committee of the whole was that Baker Tilly study that was done at the sheriff's office to also give us some little information regarding that. Unfortunately, Baker Tilly is kind of shut down, and that information isn't forthcoming as soon as we're all going to want it, I'm afraid. But hopefully we can get that addressed too.
Yep. Commissioner
Madam
Potter?
Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate having this go before committee of the whole, so all of us can be on the same page of what's going on going forward, so there's not confusion when we get the budgets. You know, two commissioners knew all the information, three are going, what's going on here? So I do appreciate that being committee hall, so we can talk this over and figure out what's the best solution going forward for us.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Delyden, or Betch.
Are you thinking of scheduling this committee of the whole yet today, or are you, I just want to, I'd like to wait at least a couple weeks yet, because I'd like, before we start discussing positions at budgetary, there's a lot of numbers that we need to get clarified or cleaned up yet from the auditor treasurer's office and admin before I'd even be comfortable having discussions about pre-approving money for next year's budget, so.
Correct, and that's part of was our discussion, that we need to gather up, know where we're at, and so
Madam Chair.
I don't know if we need to set that yet, if we can take a look at maybe setting it next week if we get more information about budget, or Commissioner Delyden?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I think the sooner the better, and the reasoning is it's all preliminary. We don't have all the information we need, but I think getting some of the highlights and understanding, I mean, we can tie it in with another committee of the whole or something to that effect. But I'm thinking just to get some base information, I think may be important. Otherwise, if we wait 2 weeks, we're not going to be able to make a decision anyway. And I think it's just an opportunity to hear some background information before we make a decision. And I'm not saying that we make a decision with the first meeting, but I think it's just getting some information would be helpful, because it's I think it'll be rather involved. So to try and solve it all at one meeting, I don't think will happen, because I think we'll be asking for additional information. So, and that's just my opinion, but it's up to the board.
Madam Chair, I guess
Betch?
my one thought on this is, because we're talking that a lot of this stuff is solidified in a Baker-Tilly study, and we haven't seen the Baker-Tilly study, and I feel like there's a methodology that has to take place. We have to see this methodology, or this Baker-Tilly report. Sheriff presents what he thinks he needs based on this report. We make decisions based on financial information from admin in the auditor treasurer's office. I feel like we'd be doing it out of order if Sheriff presents his staffing and budgeting requests prior to the Baker-Tilly report. I don't know, I feel like that's out of place. I'm also kind of questioning, did we pay Baker-Tilly 100% already?
We have not.
Because I'm kind of getting frustrated with the amount of time. I mean, we are now at, what, 16 months probably?
It's been a long time. Sheriff Derringer?
In defense of Baker Tilly, this report was supposed to be presented to the county board, I believe, the first week of March, about the exact same time that the stay-at-home orders started crawling across the country. Most of them, there is one gentleman local, most of them flew up here from Texas. So in their defense, I know that it's not all exactly what we were hoping. This thing was supposed to be wrapped up last July, I believe, was their first optimistic purview. They came from police department, very large metropolitan police department backgrounds. They had a very difficult time grasping how we do business. We are very unique, as you know, across the country with our contract policing. And so they had a very difficult time trying to plug those numbers in to demographics based on national data that they typically use, because they were kind of reinventing the wheel. So obviously there was some delays in there. I've had a draft copy in my office for a couple of months. I've gone over it. I believe I shared at the Personnel Committee that there were two specific things that had been identified where there is significant immediate need for staffing increases. But with that, I wanted this whole process to be transparent in the first place. And while I've had a draft copy, I've been very careful as to my review of that, because I always said I wanted to be in the room as this was presented to the commissioners, so we are all on the same page in a transparent fashion. I'm not behind the scenes trying to cook books or anything like that. So I know that that's been thrown out there, but in fairness to them, they were scheduled to fly up here. They actually had the plane tickets purchased and returned that first week of March to make the presentation to the board, so.
Madam Chair, and I mean, and fair enough to them, I respect that delay for the last couple of months. I just would almost, Commissioner Dahlin ask that if we have to wait 2 weeks or, you know, get them out here maybe the first week or two in June, Baker Tilly, present that report, then have that, you know, or maybe it's all in the same meeting or two separate meetings, but I really don't want to have Sheriff Derringer present all that information without doing the Baker Tilly report first, personally.
Perhaps, Sheriff, you can be in contact with Baker Tilly and see when they may be able to come to Minnesota and do a presentation. If you get that information by next week, or before that, but we could have that discussion at our county board meeting on Tuesday.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Leiden?
would it be an option to do a Skype meeting with those that are down in Texas, along with a local person or something, or WebEx?
So this is my thought. While I've appreciated the ability for some meetings to go over Zoom or Skype, I believe Commissioner Burrell can attest to some of the challenges of trying to listen in and zoom in and things like that with the meeting. The draft copy of this report is 88 pages. I don't believe that this is going to meet it. I believe that you guys I want you guys to have the opportunity to ask questions back and forth, and I don't believe if we're buffering and cutting people off and we're trying, is my face up on the computer or is somebody else's face up on the computer? I think too much of that message. We spent nearly $90,000 for this study. I do not want technology to play a role in lambasting their final presentation to us. I think that whether I have to wait a couple more weeks to have some resolve, and just to be clear, I believe that I'm making a very small ask. I know that it's significant, don't get me wrong, but it's a very small ask. I know that it's been identified in the study, and in fairness to the sheriff, we had an understanding, I believe it's going to be in some minutes somewhere, as we were making our presentation last year, knowing that the Baker Tilly study was getting postponed and it was taking longer than that, we would come back and make some requests mid-year, having those things in mind. So it was brought up, and Commissioner Delyden made the point in the Personnel Committee, and I appreciate it. He's like, hey, I know that this is one position, but we don't know what you're asking for. And I had Shauna sitting right to my left, and I said, well, if I know my business manager, if you give us about a week, which we were talking Thursday or Friday of this week, we would be virtually ready to present our 21 budget to the board. So again, I've always worked under the umbrella of transparency. I've got 4 additional requests that I'm going to be looking for in budget. So I know that it's a big ask, but it's a small ask. So I just thought maybe if you guys are open to having the conversation, at least my cards are on the table. You know what I'm coming for, and actually I already told you last year what I'm coming for, so there's not going to be any surprises in this. The only one surprise is something that I've felt all along that was very much identified in the Baker Tilly was the CID. That's very short. Now we just increased it by 1 SRO, so now we're really short, and so that's where the sergeant ask is in that CID unit between the detectives and the SRO division.
I think that what we should do is, approve the minutes and the recommendation, and then have, I don't know if we want to set a date or if we just want to wait a week till the sheriff comes back and has an idea of when Baker Tilly may come back. All right, thank you, Sheriff.
Madam Chair,
All right.
that's probably a good
Commissioner
idea. Because I think by next week, maybe Bob and Lee will have a better idea when they'll have some better numbers for us and be able to reconcile some of the numbers for this year.
Yeah. All right, any more discussion?
Agreed.
Roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Aye, okay.
I
Thank
was
you.
worried Charlie fell asleep there.
All right, so basically going forward, we won't vote on a date, we won't choose a date, but we'll wait for recommendation by next Tuesday or more information. Thank you. All right, adopt a resolution establishing the Division of Agriculture and Drainage within the Parks and Recreation Department.
So, Madam Chair, this kind of ties to the discussion that we had at the workshop regarding the moving of positions. So this resolution would make it a format. It's basically a formality to put it into place that we've officially adopted this. And then the next item coming up would be the financial related aspects of that. So 2 items here for you to consider.
All right. Is there a motion to
Madam Chair,
establish a division?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution establishing a division of agricultural and drainage within the Parks and Recreation Department.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Vetch, seconded by Commissioner Potter. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Burrell, do you have anything?
No, like I said, I'm supportive of this. I think a year ago or so when it was coming up, I was kind of a little bit kept in the dark, and so, but I'm okay with the way it's going right now. I think it's gonna be a good structure for like the weed inspector and the drainage, and kind of put those things, agricultural things together in one department. I think is going to be a good idea.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Vetch.
Mr. Mattice back there, I think Bob over here's got his fingers crossed in his pocket. He's hoping this vote goes through for him. Yeah. Are you sure what you're taking on?
Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Maybe. Aye.
Aye.
All right, resolution passes 5-0. The next item is the budget amendment for the creation of the Agriculture and Drainage Division of Parks and Recreation.
Madam, I'll make a motion to accept the budget resolution,
All right.
budget amendment.
I'll second
Made by
that.
Commissioner Delighten, seconded by Commissioner Vetch. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. All right. Now we have our coronavirus, COVID-19, future state of county operations. Administrator Kelly, we've gotten a lot of the department responses to the county reopening plan. We have a COVID preparedness plan for Wright County, and we also have a draft face covering policy for Wright County. So if you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, certainly. As you mentioned, that's what I was going to start out with. There's been a number of documents that have come your direction recently. We'd ask that department heads provide kind of an overview of what their reopening, if you will, plans were, and I know you received those last night. Wasn't planning on reviewing them at the board level, just wanted to make sure that you had them at for your reference, as well as to be aware of some of the discussions that we've been having and trying to get all the logistics ironed out with that. The 2 other items that you'd mentioned, the preparedness plan, as part of the recommendation of businesses reopening, there are certain criteria they would like to put in place, they would like to see put in place for all businesses. So we have a staff drafted that preparedness plan and would appreciate the board's adoption on that today if possible. Additionally, we have had several iterations of a face covering or a mask plan. We discussed at the workshop relative to the public and recommending visitors to our facilities to use face coverings if they so chose, but we had not adopted a policy per se of what we would be doing for staff within the county. Kind of as an update and a follow-up, I'll maybe just do the whole overview here. We did have a meeting yesterday to look at various scheduling software to facilitate us doing appointments in the upcoming weeks, and have arrived at a vendor for that. So IT is working on getting that deployed. So kind of a high level. I don't know if you want to take things in certain orders, but just wanted to
Well,
touch on all
I guess,
some of the
you know,
moving pieces.
First, thank you for the department responses, and I think it's important to get the word out, and I'm sure our communication specialist will get the word out as to what the different departments are asking, and we are asking our citizens to make appointments because we don't know what kind of a rush we may have. So when we reopen most of our counters that have not been open yet on May 27th, then we'll open up the DMV on June 4th, because that will give us more time to prepare for the window, the drive-up window that we weren't able to get ready yet, but hopefully it'll be all set to go on that. And so that's part of it. And as far as the COVID-19 preparedness plan for Wright County, if we've had a chance to look at that, if we're ready to adopt that, I would ask for a motion.
Madam Chair, I guess is the COVID-19 preparedness plan separate from the face covering policy? They're two separate
Yes.
policies.
Yes.
That is correct.
I'll
Yes.
make a motion to approve the COVID-19 preparedness plan for Wright County.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Vetch. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Delyden. Is there any discussion on this? Pretty straightforward. Thank you for putting that together. Hearing none. Hearing no discussion. Do you have anything, Commissioner Burrell?
No, I would support it.
Good. All right. Hearing none. One more, I should say. Commissioner Potter.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Madam Chair, on this.
Passes 5-0. And the face covering policy for Wright County. Commissioner
Madam
Vetch?
Chair, I had just a few minor tweaks that I wanted to make on that and to get input from the others. The first tweak I wanted to do is under policies, under the 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet point. The county will have available up to 3 face coverings per person with the intention. I just want to change out from provide to have available.
Okay.
And then the other one would be under employee groups. All Wright County buildings, face coverings are suggested for employees performing job duties in direct contact with consumers. Those are the 2 changes that I wanted to make.
Perhaps following the wording of the CDC, it says recommend. So
You can use the word, I'm fine with recommend, yeah, that's fine.
that stays in keeping with the, all right, so the 2 changes would be, the county will have available up to 3 face coverings, and face covering masks are recommended for employees performing job duties in direct contact with customers and at work in group settings of 2 or more where social distancing cannot be practiced. And we will have the sneeze guards up also, so it's appropriate to change it from required to recommended because there will be a barrier there also. All right, so is there any?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Burrell?
I was just wondering, I mean, because we do have, Commissioner Potter mentioned it earlier, every department has their own unique circumstances and stuff, and I'm wondering if this is going to just be a one-size-fits-all, or because I think there are some departments that want to have a little bit more strict policy on the wearing of the face mask. I'm just wondering, that's my question.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Delyden?
Commissioner Burrell, I think we need an overall one for the county as a whole. I think that if different departments want to have something a little stricter, that's fine. But the issue I have is that if they make it too much stricter, and we may still have these issues, but you're dealing with union employees, and they could file grievances if it's too strict or if it's not strict enough. So by going by CDC guidelines, I think it's going to keep us safe from any issues regarding that.
Okay, I guess my thought was because the county attorneys had a little bit, it seemed like they had a little more stricter policy
Right.
on it.
And you're right, and I agree that if they want a stricter policy, depending on what's going on in their individual departments with health issues, we don't know that. So if they want a stricter policy, but this is just a general overall policy that it's not exactly one size fits all. And we respect our department heads in making these decisions too. So,
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Vetch?
it is cleaner for us as a county, for departments to have a more restrictive, because if they have a less restrictive one than we have, then it gets much more complicated.
Right.
So it's easier for us to have a more of a softer policy, and then they can tweak it more that way, so.
Correct. Commissioner Potter, did you have a comment?
I'm fine with, oh.
Go ahead,
Oh,
go ahead, Commissioner Burrell.
No, I was just going to say, as long as that's the case, I'm fine with it.
Okay,
Because it's just, I'd say that there's just different departments that do have different circumstances, and dealing with the public a little bit more hands-on kind of thing, you know.
Correct.
I'm thinking of, you know, court services and even in the courtroom and stuff like that.
Yep, thank you. Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The couple of changes that Commissioner Vetch put actually make more sense and make
Yes.
it cleaner and easier to, you know, because you don't want to be so hardcore required. Recommended is great because, you know, civil liberties and all what they are, and have available. I think those are a couple really good catches on that to make it so it's general enough, but each department can still flex that into which way it fits for them.
Yeah, thank you. Any more discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Vetch?
and I think I wanted to use the have available because I don't necessarily know that we've procured enough masks for every individual at this time. This way, we'll have them out there and we can, I guess, acquire more as needed to see who wants them at that point by making that change with having available versus provided would basically essentially say that on one day we're going to hand everybody 3 masks, which we do not have at this time.
And that's a good point too, because a lot of people have their own masks or face coverings now, so they don't need to be provided, but we can have them available if something happens to them. And certainly the cloth ones that you put filters in, you know, you can wash those, or the point of having 3 is so that they have 2 days in between to you know, de-germ or whatever, but yeah. So, any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. So is there anything else on COVID, Commissioner Delyden?
Well, Madam Chair, normally we don't have a judge that graces our lowly board meetings. So I'm just kind of curious if she's here for a particular reason or has something to add, that she wants to open up the court to solve all of our problems along with taking care of all our DMV issues, or if she has some other things she'd like to talk
Oh,
about.
Madam Chair, maybe
Welcome.
she's here to give us a check the state's going to pay for the Justice Center. We just didn't know about it. Maybe
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what it
I
is.
like that. We didn't see that in
Welcome, Judge McPherson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm not here for any particular purpose other than to hear your COVID discussion and learn a little bit more about your policies. As you know, the courts have been shut down just like everybody else. We have been reopening a little bit gradually and safely by trying to do hearings remotely. And so we're using some technology to help us with some of our hearings right now. I do want to commend the sheriff to you. His staff has been incredibly helpful in this process, especially dealing with individuals who are in the jail. Certainly when someone is being deprived of their liberty, they are entitled to be heard in front of a court. And we figured out a solution that allowed that to happen with great support from the sheriff's office. So we're so grateful for that. We're having a meeting later this morning to start working on the Wright County specific courthouse plan for our COVID emergency preparedness plan. And it's our intention to continue to do as many hearings remotely as we can. As you know, there are garden variety hearings that don't involve testimony or any assessment of individuals' credibility and things that happen every day, where we just make sure people, for instance, know what they're charged with, that they've received a copy of the complaint. There's those types of hearings that we really can do effectively remotely. There are other kinds of hearings, like doing contested hearings, where we do have to judge credibility, make assessments, receive evidence that are very difficult to do remotely. Our first priority is going to be to develop a plan that allows us to do some of those hearings. And we hope to have that available, you know, and get those types of hearings up and running relatively soon. I would say within 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be able to start doing those contested hearings. Jury trials in the facility that we have presently are nearly impossible to do with social distancing, and we're very concerned about the safety of jurors and their safety, but also their comfort level. Because as you know, we pack people in pretty tightly up there. So for individuals who are trying to practice social distancing of having 6 feet of separation, bringing in a jury pool in this building is really going to be a challenge. fortunately, with the great support of the county in building the new facility, we're going to have a solution for that very soon, within months. And so we do look forward to the new building being able to provide a more safe environment for jurors to feel comfortable when they're coming in for jury trials. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell, but I do welcome any conversations or input from the county as to what we should do. And I also want to thank the county for the efforts that you made in the courts area as well to put up the plexiglass to provide some safety for our staff. We do anticipate reopening counters this summer, and having that ability to protect our staff is going to make them feel a lot more comfortable. And so when I returned to the building in late April and saw the efforts that were underway, I was very, very grateful. So,
Thank you, Judge.
but I would certainly stand for any questions if anyone has any as well.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Vetch?
So what's the methodology in terms of like priority? So is it criminal, civil, and then there's like adoption, name change? Or is it like you guys are going to do a mix of all of them when you guys start ramping back in? Is it going to be a mix of all, or is there basically going to be more the criminal case, felony case is going to be, try to get them more prioritized? Because I know I've had people ask me that, you know, where is things at on the adoption stuff, and where are things at in terms of civil litigation stuff? Are they probably lower priority than, say, people that are being held at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Vetch. Great question. I don't have a black and white answer for you, but I will tell you that of the backlog that developed when the courts closed down, well over 2/3 or maybe 3/4 was criminal. So we do have a large backlog in the criminal area that we are trying to address. Our primary concern is public safety, and especially on the criminal side of things, dealing with issues involving person crimes or more serious crimes, and that's been our priority thus far. So for instance, if we have a felony level domestic violence case versus a traffic case, we're going to take that felony level domestic every time. So we're prioritizing our criminal cases that way. In terms of our civil cases, we were able to just last week start what's called a non-criminal assignment. And so we are starting to now address non-criminal cases. So for instance, in the adoption area, when we had the COVID shutdown, we had 16 adoptions that got displaced during that period. So we did a test balloon with a couple of them, and we got through those. We had problems with one, and so now we need to adjust, but they were test balloons so that we can get to the other 14. So we are gradually going through that process. Name changes, you mentioned that. We have a set of name changes that are ready to go that we're going to be scheduling out here in June. So it's just kind of a process. One of the biggest challenges is because nothing like this has ever happened in the courts before, we were able to cancel a bunch of hearings and send people notices that, hey, your hearing's canceled, here's what's going on. But there was no there was no existing report that said, okay, tell me all the cases we canceled and tell me a little bit about them so I can reprioritize those. That took them about a month to develop that report and test it out and make sure it was working okay. The state has now given us that report. That's really been an aid to our scheduling. So,
And that's, Madam Chair, and that's where I'm hoping the courts, when they do change these, they don't change them again, because people that I know, when they change it, their lawyers are charging them fees just to notify them of the change. It's ridiculous, and that's where to have to be paying $100 for somebody to get an information letter that says your court date was canceled and you're going to get moved to this date. And that's where I'm hoping that when they do set a date and they do go forward with it, that it becomes solidified in stone, you know?
well, and I can't promise solidified in stone, but we are trying to not reschedule it multiple times. So there is a group of cases out there that are just sitting there waiting for a date that is a little bit more certain to happen. I will tell you that we have had significant technology problems because this is not technology that the courts have ever had in the past. And so the folks down at the state who support our technology really were caught behind the 8 ball. So we've been gradually trying to get that up and running. We have gone down several times. Just as a matter of frankness, we've gone down. And when we go down, that means people don't get their matters heard. But, knock on wood, this week we're stable. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah. Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple points for Judge McPherson. First off, if it's possible for you to have a communications with our communications specialist to get out in the public some of the challenges you have in courts and some of the soft targets you're looking at, a chance for reopening, to get that message out there, because the people that get confused on this don't really know, and since we seem to be the clearinghouse of information for people, just give them an idea, okay, the courts aren't going to flip the switch and open. These are some of the challenges here. Another point that was brought up is when you have due process timelines for some of these criminal charges, that's a challenge all in itself besides everything else, and that kind of forces your hand where you're at. And then the next point is, because of the COVID-19 issue here, does this precipitate change orders in the justice system, Justice Center service counter that we need to address?
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, we did specifically have a conversation with Alan about our counters, our service counters out there, given in light of what we know. And we know that the virus is supposed to be around for a while, and we're waiting on a vaccine and all of that. So similar to what we've done at the service counters here in this building with the plexiglass, we went out and actually looked at the Justice Center, at the service counters in the courts area, and said, okay, could we put up plexiglass here? Alan is working on that, and he seemed pretty positive that it wasn't going to be hard to do nor expensive. He thought it would be something that we could, and I'm not a technical person or a construction person, but he thought there might be a way that they could just insert some tabs that they could screw that plexiglass to, and then we'd have it in the future. If there were another, God forbid, another pandemic, we would have that ability to utilize that same solution real easily if we'd put something in now. But Alan was going to look at that and talk to some folks and then come up with a solution for that.
Good.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner
Just
Potter.
one more observation. 'Cause when you see what's going on here, obviously, we can tell COVID not to go there, but it's going to go there anyway. To do these at front end, and these change orders are great to put in before we open up and have to retro it. The contractors are there now. It's the time to go. Where's our challenge? Where there's law library, court services, courts, where do we need to put these? And Alan's on top of that, which is good, because
Yes.
I don't think they're going to be very high in the cost department, but it's good just to get them done right now, just prepare.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner, especially we're going to be having this meeting today, and then we are going to be doing a walkthrough out of the new facility on Wednesday afternoon with an eye toward that very thing. Are there any other issues that we should deal with now so that when we do open up that facility, that we can make the best use of it?
Good.
Madam Chair, I just want to,
Mr. Bench.
Your Honor, thank you so much for coming
Yes.
here today and just ad hoc talking us through loosely what's going on in the courts. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
appreciate it.
And I am so grateful as well that we have the good communication that we do have. Obviously, these are challenging times, and I think citizens expect government to work well and work well together. And I think that the communication that we've been able to do with the county has been very beneficial in that regard. So my thanks.
Appreciate it. All right. Nothing else on COVID. We will move on to Advisory Committee, Advisory Board updates. Commissioner Potter, would you like to
Thank
start?
you, Madam Chair. Just a couple items here. I addressed the one with Honorable Judge McPherson earlier. We meet this afternoon with the Library Board. We met last week on Finance Committee, and it appears that we might even have a signatory budget reduction in the cost to Wright County, because we have enough reserves and we can cash in a CD and try to temper that. Some of our smaller counties in that system were having bigger challenges than we are. Ours is going to be enough, but their smaller county, it hits them harder than ours does. So looking for that, so we'll hopefully come in with a budgetary reduction on our signatory contribution. The next item is some are looking for a June 1st soft opening at the libraries. I mean, we did curbside for most all of them. limited, but then, and you want to talk to your local library to see which date they plan on opening or what you're gonna, it's all predicated on like some of the city halls and some of the things getting done, but we're working towards how do we open that, what does it look like, the social distancing, everything. There's a lot of things to go there because the library, the demand for services have been going up because people are obviously reading more and everything else. So that's good for that. So it's June 1st is soft opening for some of them, see which way they go, but somewhere early June, I expect most of them to work forward. The time off has actually helped us on some of the buildings get some updates and some repairs. We have a couple of them in the county that we needed actually a few days in a row of it being closed to get the repairs done, and they've been able to get them done, which is good. The last item I got here is the legislative session ended with no bonding bill. I listened in on the capital investment in the Senate on Saturday, and all of our bonding requests went through that fine. It just when it got to the full committee there, the uniqueness of what happened. The House failed because it had way too much in the bonding, and the Senate failed because it didn't have enough in the bonding. It's kind of because they need a supermajority to pass it. It's kind of a unique situation, and they will be calling the special session on June 12th, which actually coincides with the peacetime emergency declaration expiring for the Governor Wall. So that more to come on that. That's all I have.
I don't have a lot. It was a busy, slow week last week, Madam Chair. Just a lot of ditch issue stuff and just a lot of people reaching out to me regarding the COVID deal and businesses closing. I don't know if you guys have had the number of emails and phone calls that I've had. That compiled with the ditch and made for a busy, slow week.
Yep. Thank you. Commissioner Burrell, do you have any updates?
Madam Chair, yeah, just, you heard my Central Minnesota Council on Aging one kind of already.
Yep.
And then we did have a one watershed, one plan, and I think I'll talk more about that. It's going to be coming before the board for the approval, and I can talk a little bit more about that at that point.
Okay.
Soil water met, but I don't think I had anything spectacular to mention, unless I forgot something.
Is there
That's all I have.
Is there any updates on the fair potential this year? County Fair. Any word on that? Commissioner Burrell?
Sorry, I was talking when I was muted.
Okay. Yes.
You missed that then, huh?
We missed it.
And it was so articulate, I don't know if I'd be able to say it the same way again.
If you would
Oh,
talk,
just that they're meeting.
Charlie, talk louder when you have yourself muted. We'd have a better chance maybe.
Yeah, there you go. My wife could hear me upstairs. But anyway, on our June 1st meeting, they will be making the decision whether to postpone it for another year. And then the talk was that if we do it, it's going to be the 150th, celebration next year. And
Yes.
I'm kind of leaning toward that way. And it would be nice to hear something, from the board how they feel too. But I just don't want it to even be 10% less attendance or 20%. I think those little margins like that would make a difference between a successful fair and a not successful one. So anyway, but yeah, we'd be open to your suggestions as well. But they'll be making the call June 1st.
Thank you. All right. Well, I was at the Buffalo Safe Schools, actually WebEx meeting on May 6th, and one of the principals, I think, had a nice quote about how this is operating during all this COVID and making these, doing what we need to do to keep things running. And he said, it's like building a plane while you're flying it. And that's kind of, I was like, that's a good way to describe it. We're building this plane while we're flying it. Buffalo, the school district, it's very large, 107 square miles in the district. And at that time, they delivered over 100,000 meals to kids. And they also issued 120 devices to them. So they've, have doing a lot of planning, of course, and it's the distance learning and reaching out to kids, so it's been a trying time for them particularly. At the Safe Schools meeting, we had, that was via Zoom. So we welcome new board members, the Annandale Chief, Peter Standifer, and also Amy LaValle, who has been part of the Just Drive campaign since her son was tragically killed by a distracted driver. And the Toward Zero Death statewide enforcement updates. The distracted driving campaign will be running June 1st through the 14th, so it'll be part of a statewide thing, and also looking ahead at the Click It or Ticket from November 16th to November 29th. That's a ways away. The upcoming dates for the Wright Road classes, they're online, so they've had to make those adjustments. And also, of course, all the mock crashes were canceled. That's been a disappointment for people because they've always been well attended. And I also had a Safe Harbor webinar on sex trafficking. So that was a few of the things, and then working with citizens on a few other items. Commissioner Lyden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, Commissioner Potter and myself did a WebEx on the safe schools for St. Michael, Albertville. And they're just like every other school district, they're making it up as they go along. It's been challenging for them, but I think they've been doing a great job. And everybody's, including up here in the courthouse, we're doing the best we can. And I like that analogy that we're building the airplane as we're flying it. I kind of like that. That really seems pretty darn realistic.
It really is a good way to put it.
And then yesterday, again, we met with Lee regarding the strategic planning for the future, and you guys are aware of all that. So that's about all I got.
All right, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, you hit a lot of the points I was going to. Just an update. I've had some discussions with Dwayne Northagen. I mentioned in a previous update about a loan program they're putting together. So working on some final logistics with that, and we'll have that in front of the board to review. Do some grant opportunities to loan opportunities to local businesses through Wright County Economic Development Partnership.
Lee?
Yes.
Regarding that group, Dwayne's retiring June, was it?
I thought it was April.
It was supposed to be April.
Oh, okay.
But-
So, but is he hanging on until we find a replacement?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Delyden, we have found a replacement, but it's with everything going on, it's been delayed. So Dwayne has agreed to stay on a little bit until we get through this.
Okay.
To get there. And a further note with the loan that they're proposing, it's a 0% loan, but there's a 1% origination fee to cover some administration costs, and 24-month payback? And
I think that's
a
right.
24-month payback, but I think there's some flexibility built in there, depends on what's going on. So that 24-month isn't a hard number, but it's the recommended number. So I think it's a good program. I apologize for not having this there before, because I think that should have been there before this all happens, but usually it takes a crisis for you to see where your shortcomings are. And I'd like to see this in the future to help our small businesses, because this has just rocked their world, what's been going on here, and it's just not good, not sustainable. Our small business group in Wright County are having their challenges, but I know outstate it's even worse. Because I'm hearing it from out in Alexandria and out that way, Big Stone and that, they don't know what to do. Most of them are not going to be able to recover from this.
So, Madam Chair, did they
Mr.
offer, so they made an offer to an individual for the position?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And they're just now, because of the timing that, okay. That's it. So there'll be more to come on that probably within the next month or so.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, anything else, Administrator Kelly?
I interrupted him, so
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sure he's got more.
It led into other
My
conversations.
apologies, it's just that when
No,
you
that's,
brought
it's,
that up, it just reminded me, and I thought it was important to know.
yeah, it's timely to speak to it then. Of course, ERP continues with our requirements, fleshing out, gathering of information and fleshing out our requirements, still continuing on even with COVID, and doing some of those things. I guess I'd just encourage the public to be sure to check our website. We're going to be doing some revisions to that to try and get the appointments and things more to the forefront, so it's easy to see what's the information of the current status. Trying to look at some different ways of signage and posting out there and some different stories and communications to try and get the word out, because that is the challenge of
Appreciate that.
just make it known, so.
All right. If there is nothing else to come before the board, we are adjourned at 10:00.